The truth occurs. The truth occurs.
Hi everyone. I'm a big advocate of health freedom, informed consent, and vaccine awareness. So when I saw this, I was very concerned. Veteran forced vaccinated after arrest at Bilderberg. A man was arrested at the Bilderberg meeting, well, outside, and he was very badly treated when he was arrested, including having his privates groped. And he was also injected with something in the forearm, which at first he thought was a vaccine, but which turned out to be a TB test. The TB test, also known as the Montu test or the PPD skin test, involves injecting tuberculin in the form of a purified protein derivative under the skin of the forearm, and then to look for a reaction to try to determine whether or not the person is infected with TB. The problem is, well, for one, that the test is not very reliable. I mean, it can't give you a definitive diagnosis. It's a lot like the HIV test in that way. They determine whether someone is positive based on the severity of the reaction on the forearm and whether they have certain risk factors. You can get false positives and you can get false negatives. So having a reaction doesn't necessarily mean you have TB. And in fact, there are two forms of TB. There's an acute infection where you're actually sick and you would have symptoms like fever, chills, weight loss, night sweats, coughing and coughing stuff up, including sometimes blood. And this is a serious disease if you have that, but that's the active infection. There's also what's known as a latent infection, which means you've been exposed, but you're not actually sick and you're not contagious. You're only contagious if you have active TB. You can have latent TB for years, even decades, and never fall sick, but there is the possibility that you will, and about 10% of people who carry latent TB go on to develop an active infection at some point. According to the WHO, 1/3 of the world's population actually has latent TB. Most of that is in low and middle income countries. Most of these people just have a latent infection, they're carrying it, and they're not contagious. The risk, as I mentioned before, is about 10% of these people will go on to develop an active infection. And what's especially worrying about TB is the development of these multi-drug resistant strains of TB. This has resulted from people being treated for TB with antibiotics and not completing the course of antibiotics properly. The TB then mutates and becomes antibiotic resistant, and this antibiotic resistant strain can then be passed on to other people. A lot of multi-drug resistant TB was developed, apparently intentionally, by prison doctors in Russia who would interrupt prisoners' TB treatment. And I looked into this. There's an interesting documentary about Russian prisons, and it really looks like they did this on purpose to create a biological weapon. One place where TB could spread easily would be in an overcrowded place like a prison, and that's probably why they're doing TB tests on people when they go to prison. Although this person wasn't going to prison, he was just arrested. And I know that it's not only happening in Virginia, because if you really look, you'll see that people are posting that they've gotten TB tests at other police departments across the country as well. Obviously, I am not in favor of people being injected with anything by force. So right away that doesn't sit well with me. But trying to be objective, looking at it in terms of, is this a valuable measure that they're taking to protect public health, I had to look at the big picture. And honestly, after looking at the big picture, it just leaves me wondering, what is the point of testing people with TB when they get arrested? Because as I just explained to you, the test is not conclusive. You can have a positive test and not have TB. You can have a negative test and have TB. If you even have a positive test and have TB, chances are that it's a latent infection which is not contagious. So you're not posing a threat to the prison community or the population at large. I'm starting to think that they're probably just doing this for the purpose of statistics, because that's really the only purpose I could see that it would serve. If they have prisoners coming in who were sick, who were coughing, and they were testing them, and then also maybe giving them an x-ray and concluding that they in fact have active TB, well, that would be a good thing to do, and it would be good to segregate them and to treat them with antibiotics. But to just test people randomly, you know, well, not randomly, but to just test everyone who comes in when they get arrested, to me, it really seems like a waste of resources, a waste of taxpayers' money, to say the very least. And then, of course, there's also the risk of the test itself. I've had this test. I've actually had it twice because I used to work in hospitals. I didn't have TB, and I didn't have any reaction to the test. But anytime you're injecting something into your body, it's not to be taken lightly. Even if it's only a test, it's not a vaccine, still you're injecting something. And there are side effects that you can have from the test. According to this article on eHow, the more common side effects of the tuberculosis test are pain at the injection site, headache, nausea, rash, itching, fever, dizziness, drowsiness, general feeling of illness, vomiting, and diarrhea. So as you see, it's not just nothing. Whatever they're injecting, it's enough that it can actually cause side effects that are very much like any vaccine reaction. And then on top of that, there is the much more serious but also much more rare side effect of having an anaphylactic reaction, a severe allergic reaction, which can be treated with an EpiPen. But still, looking at this, and like I said, what's the point of doing this test? What are you going to do with this information? I know someone who's PhD in epidemiology, and she specializes in TB. She'd probably disagree with me. I'd actually really like to hear her point of view, but I don't want to ask her about that because that's, you know, work, and I don't want to talk to her about work. But I'd like to know more about what is the point of doing this test. I'm really not sure why they're doing it. Like I said, maybe it's just for statistics. The veteran, he was told that if he doesn't take the test, then he's going to be held in prison until he goes to court. So, I don't know, some people who don't want to take it might do that. But like I said, I've actually had it twice, and I didn't have any problem with it. But I just wanted to do this little video to give you more more information, so that you know what it is you're dealing with. And if you do get arrested and you get that, so you know that it's not a vaccine, it's a test, but there are risks, and it's probably a waste of time and money. So let me know what you think, and thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.